Hi guys, I'm Charlie.
And I'm Kyle.
And welcome back to Slash 2. We're recording this one a little bit late. Normally we have these a week in advance, but I'm kind of glad we waited because there's some fun news to do with gaming come out that we'll be covering a little bit later. I want to apologise in advance for any odd noises. One of our cats has had surgery recently and she's in a bit of a state.
She's like a lamp in a baby grow.
She's got like a baby grow and a cone. Because she tore her stitches once already and they didn't want to risk it.
And right now she's sound asleep on your lap.
That's okay, let's hope she stays asleep.
Please.
Also an update, we bought a domain. So there's a website incoming. It's going to be slash2.co.uk. I think at first we're just going to have it loop back round to the YouTube channel to start. Or the SoundCloud just as a placeholder. But we're getting there. We're getting there.
Eventually we'll make it all singing and dancing with pictures of the cats, embedded videos and podcast and...
all that fancy stuff.
Yeah, shiny internet things.
Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, while we're still plodding along...
world building.
Yeah, something I've been looking forward to for a while. Basically, we're going to cover a couple of games we think do it well, a couple of examples of we think aren't so great, and then go on to how you can sort of approach it yourself. Obviously, we have D&D, as this podcast is part of a D&D family. So there's a few things, obviously tips and tricks, the way I approach world building in my world that we can go through as well. Kyle, the first thing on our list is very much for you.
Metal Gear Solid.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know straight away a lot of people out there are just going to be like, what the hell? That is like, don't even go there sort of thing, because you're going to need corkboards and string and various diagrams and, you know, just shit. But the Metal Gear universe in general is really well fleshed out, really well built and very believable. Since it is essentially just a spin on the world that we have, apart from the world that we have doesn't have fucking awesome cyborg ninjas, robots, and, like, Big Boss.
Yeah, I will say there is some bad world building in that game as well.
We don't talk about MGS2. If you ignore that one, everything makes perfect sense. But in all seriousness, I want to specifically mention Metal Gear Solid... the original one on the PS1, which that was all based on a tiny little island called Shadow Moses out in the middle of nowhere. If you're any sort of man of culture or woman of culture, or do not want to assume, you'll have played that game and you'll know all what it's about. And it was really, really sort of fleshed out. You felt this sort of urgency and tension in the world, and that your actions that you were carrying out within the game had that knock-on effect. And you know. It's seen throughout it, even though it's a very linear style game, it gives you that illusion
of a larger world and a larger environment.
Yeah, but then if we kick it up a notch and go straight from 1 to 3, you essentially had jungle environments, you had multiple entry points, there was wildlife that you could capture and eat, there was loads of neat little things you could do.
Just make it feel more real and believable, doesn't it?
Yeah, like if you're in the cave levels... I am going to ruin these games. If you haven't played them, just pause it, play the game, and then come and unpause it after you've spent like 9 days like in a fucking duvet with a beard.
To be fair, all last episode was talking about Metal Gear, so I'm sure we've spoiled pretty much everything already.
Well, there's just little things like, if you're doing the underground tunnel section, if you, for example, were to leave Snake idle, I forgot how long it's for, I think it's like half an hour or 45 minutes, the screen brightness will adjust as though Snake's eyes are adjusting to his environment, so you don't need the torch or anything else to sort of see where you're going, which is really neat.
Yeah, your night vision improves.
Yeah, you can get indigestion, you can throw up, you can get all sorts. You know, they've took the survival to a whole other level. Like, you've got stamina, you've got energy that depletes, and you know, after you've run out of that energy, you need to like either eat something or take a rest.
But I will say with the Metal Gear series, they're very good at getting that balance of it being realistic and it being tedious. There are lots of games where keeping up with the basic stuff gets very, very tedious. I mean, Penn and Teller had a game ages and ages ago, really, really old game, and it like you had to drive to Las Vegas, and it's a real-time bus drive, and it's a 3-hour drive, and it's a 3-hour section of game. Like, getting that balance right is very, very hard, but it does help build a world that feels more realistic and pulls you in more.
Oh yeah, but like Metal Gear isn't that excessive.
No, that's but why it works.
It does have some stuff that is. Sorry, the cat is licking a cone.
that's what that weird noise is. Sorry.
We're not just sanding the table. Honestly, but yeah, with Metal Gear, like it does have some sort of balance in that respect. But then it will go completely off the charts, like in the game I didn't want to mention, Metal Gear Solid 2, where you've got that woman Fortune who can't be hit by a bullet, and it turns out she's got a device that deflects them, that she doesn't even know about herself, and she's all like, "Why would you let me die?" And, eventually she does.
It's muffin time.
It's me when I'm at work.
I mean...
Yeah, it is a bit crazy, but... At the same time, if like Kojima and, dare I say, Konami, or the powers that be within Konami, have built an excellent world, just like the Silent Hill series. It's got a cult following. There's a fucking app, several apps in fact, and books that go in depth in that universe, and you can learn all kinds of crap about the Patriots and the the Sons of Liberty sort of stuff, and I don't know. I'm just sort of droning on now. It's just a really good series, and I'm probably going to go play on it when we're done with this.
I hope not. It's really late. Yeah, I mean, like I say, getting that balance right of realism's just... Because world building, obviously, you've got the obvious stuff. You've got lore. You've got the actual physical layout of a world. But how things work and put together is, I think, the most important part of that.
Yeah.
One game that I've talked about at length multiple times on this podcast, and I'm feeling he's getting a little bit old hat at this point, but works well for this, is Skyrim. Now, again, there's parts of, obviously, the Elder Scrolls series that don't line up correctly. There's definitely bits of lore and stuff that just don't fit right, that it just doesn't work.
It's a janky game on a janky engine, but somehow it works.
Yeah, but the thing with Skyrim is that the way it was built, the movement from warmer climates to colder one was done so well, and the actual layout was really, really well done. Everything feels natural, everything feels realistic in that world. And obviously there are mods and stuff to add things like freezing and needing to camp and blah, 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 that heighten the realism.
And on top of that, though...
it was pretty solid to start with.
And it's available on every platform. It's just been announced it's going to be coming out on Samsung Smart Fridge and DS Lite. Like, seriously, that game's on fucking everything. And
people keep buying it.
It stood the test of time. Yeah, I mean, personally, I've got like 2 or 3 copies of this goddamn game.
Mm-hmm. You've got 2 on Steam alone.
Have I?
Yeah, you've got the standard Skyrim and special edition.
Oh, yeah, you probably got one with the Humble Bundle thing at some point.
But yeah, I mean, people wouldn't still be buying it on new consoles 9 years later, 8 years later, if it wasn't a good game.
I know, I kind of want it on the Switch, but like...
Me too, but I'm not allowed.
I know, but I have the same problem, like, I've got Doom syndrome, where I've got Doom on every format, like... I shit you not, I've got it in floppy disk, CD-ROM, I've got it for the Game Boy Advance, Nintendo 64, PlayStation, PC, frickin' Xbox, PlayStation. I've got it on everything. Granted, they're not all the same game, because obviously, like, Doom's evolved through time, just like technology has, and there's sequels and stuff, but I've got more copies of Doom than I have in any other game.
Well, I mean, that sort of leads on to something I wanted to mention, which...
Are we switching to a bit of bad world building now?
Yeah, so...
So this is the shit sandwich now.
I like the Doom games.
Mm-hmm.
But what the fuck is going on with the, like, character timeline? So, we mentioned before that the main character in Doom is called...
Blazkowicz.
Mm-hmm. BJ Blazkowicz. So, he is the descendant of the main character from the original Wolfenstein game.
Yeah. And Commander King.
Okay, so, first issue. He's apparently, according to developers, they've confirmed the sort of timeline, he is the great-grandson of the Wolfenstein guy. Please explain to me how technology made that massive leap in, like, not even 100 years.
It's demon magic.
But the timelines don't make sense. And then, they've now added the Commander Keen, you know, the, like, 12-year-old who goes on a space adventure.
8-year-old.
The 8-year-old who goes on a space adventure called, what was it, Billy Blaze, is actually
Blaze is
Doom Guy's dad.
Bits.
Doom Guy's dad! No, it's not. They retconned that afterwards to force it to fit. The timeline doesn't make sense. That's just sticking things together for the sake of it, the same as J.K. Rowling does. It's not good world building.
But still, it's Doom. Like, you look at the armour thing, and everyone's like, oh, how did he go from, like, Sentinel armour to, like, he's like, I'm gonna rip you a new fucking Pancreas armour in the latest version of the game. It's fucking demon magic. There's probably some kind of, like, ritual, like, religious, sciencey time machine somewhere, and he's like, get in the chariot, we've gotta go back to the future in Mars.
Why are you like this? No, yeah, it annoys me that they've ended up retconning all that stuff into Doom and just breaking everything. To
be fair, until you really brought it to my attention, I just sort of skimmed right over it, and I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go and, like, you know, remove some spleens.
Yeah, you didn't realise at all that it was all the same.
Well, I did, but I thought Doom 2016 was also a reboot in lore, as well as a reboot in the thing. So I thought, like, Doom, like, 1 and 2 were one, Doom 64 was, like, a spin-off, and then, obviously, like, Doom 3, I can't hold a shotgun and a torch at the same time until the developers patched it because it was too fucking hard. You know, it fucks me off. That. Good. Like, no, I loved it when you could switch between the shotgun and this torch. Like, you would see the demon and be like, right, okay, I'm gonna get my shotgun out. You put the torch down, you get the shot. Oh, it's dark. Fuck, where's he gone? You know, I loved that gameplay mechanic, but I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna say it proud. You fucking filthy console peasants are the reason why we had that. No, but seriously.
The man who owns every console ever made.
Yeah, and PC. The consoles are there as lesser sacrifices to ensure my computer continues to run.
Anyway, let's do another bad one.
So we're having a double... Is this going to be like a double
Well, we had two good
sandwich?
ones, so let's have two bad ones.
Okay.
I wanted to mention Kingdom Hearts. And this is very controversial, because I know Kingdom Hearts, obviously the 3's just come out, it's everybody's baby. Making things more complicated does not make it better.
So this is like a baby that's had, like, something wrong, like it's got 9 legs.
Well, I showed you the Polygon video, didn't I?
Fucking yes. Like, you could...
It doesn't need to be that complicated. This guy ordered this kid, who then split into 2 people, who then ordered somebody else and split into another 2 people. No, it doesn't need to be that complicated. Making it more complicated doesn't make it better.
It feels like a really expensive, really confusing Disney advertisement campaign that's, like, left me confused and not wanting anything to do with it.
The thing is, they write themselves into a hole or into a corner and just make it more complicated to try and hide that and try and work around it. As someone who does world building and does lore and history, keep it simple. Like, there were so many videos trying to explain the history of Kingdom Hearts and the story up till now. Even for die-hard gamers and people who love the series, needed to go and, like, double-check what the fuck was going on. When it reaches that, if it takes more than a couple of minutes of just skimming back over something, your players aren't going to remember it. It's going to leave them confused when you try and drop big bombs on them with stuff that they're supposed to remember, but they can't because there's, like, 50 million bits of confusing information thrown at them. Yes, complex storylines are great. Yes, you know, tying things up in a nice little bow after laying out all these seeds is very, very satisfying for you and your players. But if it reaches a point when the players have no hope of knowing what the fuck is going on, it's just not good storytelling.
No.
And like I say, lore is part of world building. Actual physical layout and how the world works is part of it, but history and how we got there is another. And as you write a series, you are writing lore, you are writing more world building. It can't be that complicated. You just lose people.
So, if I may, I'm going to make a very obscure reference to part of the internet. I feel like Kingdom Hearts is the gaming world's equivalent to that famously bad story, My Immortal.
I showed you.
If you don't know what it is, go to the Internet Historian on YouTube, and you can watch his videos there and listen to his silky smooth voice. because he'll tell you all about it, and he reads it in perfect tense as the original author intended it to be shat out onto a page.
To be fair, I think most people know what My Immortal is.
I know, but there's a few people out there that were born after that time that have now got access to a computer.
So if you don't know, it's basically the original bad fan fiction.
Yeah, and that's what Kingdom Hearts is to me. Kingdom Hearts looks like Mickey Mouse and some Final Fantasy director did the 10 Minutes of Heaven or whatever in a closet, apart from it where...
7 minutes in heaven.
You can tell I've never played it.
Neither have I.
But then one of them's found out...
I just read a lot of fan fiction.
Yeah. But the problem is, like, while they were in there, they found out one of them's got a barbed penis, and now they're stuck together for the next 45 minutes, and they don't know what to do, so they start writing a story, and before they fucking know it, Donald Duck's rolled in there, and he's full of tequila, and he just wants to fucking ruin everything. You know, like, this just... I just know. Like, this is why I've avoided it. It's like the Final Fantasy series. It's gone on for so long that, like, it's making soap operas look bad.
Yeah, I mean, I do like Final Fantasy. You know, I haven't played 3 yet because I haven't had time.
Wait, as in 3 on the Super Nintendo?
No,
Oh, you mean Kingdom Hearts?
3.
Sorry, I thought you was referring to Final Fantasy.
No, Kingdom Hearts 3. I've not played it yet. I genuinely do enjoy the series. It is a fun series of games. But that doesn't excuse the needless complication that they throw in.
You just glaze over, don't you?
Yeah, a lot of the... I mean, there was, how many hours of cutscenes in the latest Kingdom Hearts, apparently?
I don't know, but it still doesn't beat Metal Gear Solid 4 with its 90-minute cutscene at the end.
Yeah, it's needless.
Yeah.
But, do you want to do our last good one or our last bad one first?
I want to do the last good one.
Okay, this is your time to shine, sir.
So, in the notes, I wrote this down as Steely Wheelie Automobili 5, which to everyone else it's just GTA 5. And it's the mother of all world building, in my opinion, because you can literally do whatever you want in this game. You can go and cycle on the beach, you can beat up a hooker, you can get a haircut, you can run over some hipsters outside a coffee shop. Amen. You can do whatever the hell you want in this game. You can even go hang gliding. Like, how many other games you know where it's like, oh, I've finished this crime spree, I rate fancy some hang gliding. And, like, you can land on a boat and then, you know, ride off into the sunset. The game is literally life simulator, and I now understand why people, like, play it all the time. Because it is, like, Second Life for cool kids.
I suppose you're referring mostly to the online, then.
Well, online and single player, because, like, in the single player campaign there's enough, and if you don't play Trevor most of your time, then I don't even know why you GTA, because if you can't play a psychopath in his pants on a small island in the south, then are you even GTA?
Yeah, I think with GTA 5 it is the build they've done of the playable area. Having so many activities you can do, making it an actual working city and surrounding areas, it feels like
but the thing is
real.
They've had this edge since the early days on the PlayStation 1 and PC, where their idea was to build a living, breathing city that then you could steal a car and then find a flamethrower and set a line of Elvis Presley's on fire. You know, it feels great. Like, you feel like you've actually stole a car off somebody and ruined their day. You know, you feel like, you know, you can, like, up your character's skills and things like that just by, like, taking them on flying lessons or whatever you want to do.
It does feel like a real world. Again, without too many of the realistic stuff that makes it boring.
Like paying bills and actually going to work, and then letting the existential dread set in until you need medication just to get through a standard workday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a well-built world in terms of stuff that's there. The world goes on around you without you.
Yeah.
Which is something that's really important to world building.
And it's kind of a bit deep because that's what happens in real life.
Sorry, I keep stuffing my hand in Luna's way of licking, so she licks me instead of the cone. But cats' tongues are rough, and after a while it starts to hurt.
Yeah, she's just 40 grit in there. She got my leg the other day, and I was like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, cats' tongues are like sandpaper. You have to get used to this.
No, I don't.
Oh, you do when you're as licky as Luna. Anyway, last one before we move on to some D&D stuff then. The last bad one.
Yep. So, do you want me to open with this one? Because I've got quite a strong, like...
Yeah, let's get your opinions out there.
Fallout.
The new one.
Specifically, yeah. Fallout 4.
No,
No,
76.
Oh, you want to go with 70? Well, we do both, so fuck it, let's do both.
76 is the one that's broken everything.
Let's do the seesaw of disappointment. And we'll start off at the top of the arc, where it's good, where you can see all of the playground around you, and you know that right now, everything's pretty sweet. So, Fallout 4, excellent world building, fantastic characters, it really draws you in, there's loads to find, loads of adventure, and that game will keep, well, it kept me, like, plonked in front of it for a couple 100 hours at least, and I loved every single minute of it. Even if it was doing the same shit again, it was just trying different approaches, or just seeing exactly where the boundaries of the world end, and just scoping out every single building lockbox, and God knows what else I could find.
See, a lot of people would argue that New Vegas was better than 4.
I like New Vegas because Chandler from Friends voice acted a character.
the big bad evil guy.
Yeah, he loves Fallout. He absolutely loves it. But that's the top of the seesaw of disappointment. Now we're going to come down to the bottom, where you normally hurt your backside, or genitals, depending on how your backside met the seat on the way down. Fallout 76.
I think...
Or 70 dicks. Sucked, as I like to call it.
Yeah, I think people have been beating this one just for how much it breaks the universe.
Beating it relentlessly.
You know, the Brotherhood of Steel wasn't formed yet they're in the game. The fact that it's 25 years after a nuclear apocalypse and everything is absolutely fine. Like, it just doesn't add up. Nothing adds up to the world they've built this far. It just destroys all of the lore that they've been building.
In defence of 76, though, in the nuclear sort of thing, they did state that, like, it dodged a lot of the nuclear fallout. And to be fair, nukes do cause a lot of damage, but at the same time, there's things that can avoid damage from those nukes. So I understand, like, what 76 were trying to do, but I'm not going to say I'm backing it with factual evidence because it's a fucking video game. But
yeah,
it is fucking broke. I mean, part of the world building in that game is that you can fucking fall through the world.
Yeah, it just... They've broken a lot of their own lore, a lot of their own rules they've established for this world. And...
But it's because I'm a multiplayer.
Well, yeah, but unless you've got a reason to prove... Like, if you've spent ages building up a specific group and their timeline, to suddenly dump on your players that... we're going to forget that and ignore it now, without proper reason to. Like, you could tie that in really, really well, end up having a conspiracy, have it be that this initial Brotherhood that shouldn't be here yet inspired the main one that was coming up later, and you can write that into your story so it builds to the world rather than takes away from it. Yeah. It just feels lazy.
It does. What the most lazy part is, even though Fallout 76, of course, is supposed to be a multiplayer game, the only closest thing you can get to an NPC is those like static robot terminals. There are no there are no non-player characters in there. There are no vendors or anything like that, and no quests that come from real people. So a big huge chunk of the world building is like missing, because I believe that a good well-built world has got good well-built characters in it that make you more interested in that world because of how they interact with it. Like I like. Going back to Fallout 4, I absolutely loved the robot detective.
Yes.
He was awesome, and I thoroughly enjoyed his quest line to the point where I played it through twice. Because I've got it on the console as well, because why not? So it was, that was fantastic, and that was an excellent bit of world building. You got attached to the character, you got attached to the story, and it had this whole arc in it where you're trying to find out where your kid is, and you end up going through various things to rescue this guy in the first place. You end up going through a vault that's been taken over by thugs, and it's just awesome. And like, you don't get that in 76. You get, oh look, here's a mangled corpse, it's got a cassette tape, let's have a listen. Oh fucking hell, I need to go and collect 10 of these things and shove them up my arse.
Yeah, and it feels hollow.
Yeah.
It feels like it was thrown together without much forethought.
A bit like your arse must feel after you pay full whack for it.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I really hope they don't do that to the new Elder Scrolls game.
Fallout 76 is a sad hand job compared to its predecessor, which was a gorgeous romantic night in Vegas.
But hopefully they'll learn a lot from it and come back stronger now next time.
I don't. I just want them to fucking hurry up and finish Doom Eternal. It's like, Bethesda is like firmly lodged in ID's backside. I know I've mentioned butt things quite a lot in the last minute and a half, but They're just easy metaphors.
Anyway, shall we move on?
D&D world building.
Yes.
This is your baby, go for it.
I mentioned before, I have a homebrew world that I've been doing, which basically means I've built it up pretty much from scratch. I find for me, the best way to write something is to start at the end. So before I'd come up with a basic premise of idea and themes that I wanted to cover in the D&D world that I was building. But the first thing I did was decide what my endpoint was. What I want the final stages of this story to be. And then build out from there. I mean, some people find it easier to build a world map first. Mm-hmm. The best way to do that is literally slap random shapes together and then join them up and see what happens. Islands and stuff are weird shapes. You know, continents are weird shapes, so you get a lot of mileage from that. It's, what do I need? I decided I wanted different kingdoms for different races, keep them relatively separate most of the time. So, obviously split the continents I'd made into zones for each one. Mm-hmm. Obviously each one needs a capital city, unless there's a reason for there not to be. So I have an area called the Wastes, which are sort of desert, and the people that live there are more nomadic. They travel.
It's like D&D's version of Mad Max.
No.
Oh.
Not at all. But that was the reason why there's certain sacred areas in there, but there's no capital city. But starting with a capital city is really good. Start with important things to infrastructure. So, capital city, ports, where trade happens. So, where the main crossovers and borders are going to be between these countries, where and how they interact.
Did you have a core world event as well that was part of it? With the dude in the tower.
Are you talking about Aaron?
Fall, yeah.
Yeah, so that was part of the setup idea. So I knew that I wanted my world to, and the themes to be covered was Immortality. It's actually based off a dream I'd had that I rewrote into the start of the D&D campaign.
It's a hell of a dream.
Which is a man called Aaron, who is immortal. He's lived for so long he doesn't really remember how it started. Obviously, I mean, I can barely remember my childhood, and that wasn't very long ago. Imagine that times a million. He, basically, at the start of it, is managed to escape from, basically, imprisonment. Mm-hmm. Trapped on an island just off the south coast of Samarin, which is the southern dwarvish kingdom. He's escaped from these eldritch beasts, basically, that were keeping him trapped there. The creatures would tear him limb from limb and destroy him every day, and he would slowly stitch back together every night.
That's fucking metal. Mm-hmm. Like, metal as fuck. He
finally managed to escape after about 400 years, and was making his way further north. So he ended up on that island because he was travelling around the continent as he does. He is immortal, he can't stay in one place for too long. He does what he can to help people, and then he moves on. Mm-hmm. And he ended up in Alandil, which used to be in a Fey forest. It was a elven, not quite capital city, but an important city. And city's probably a little bit of a loose term. There wasn't that many people that lived there. The king of Alandil was a... I haven't got all my full notes, so I haven't got all the names to hand, was an elf who had basically led to the enslavement of the dwarvish people. So Samarin was always a native dwarvish area. Mm-hmm. They lived in this ring of mountains around the forest called the Fells. The elves had struck up a war with them, driven them out of their homes, and because they initially were farmers, driven them into the mountains, and then driven them back out and into enslavement. Aaron had landed at Alandil, seen the treatment of these dwarves, and decided to help them. So while he was staying under the king's, obviously, graces, he was planning with a young dwarf called Maya how to free her people, basically. Mm-hmm. When it came down to it, it basically reached a point where it was the dwarves or him. He could sacrifice himself prove his immortality, because obviously people go crazy for that shit, and distract them into chasing after him, or let them recapture all the dwarves who he'd helped escape. So he sacrificed himself, was tortured for a long, long time as they tried to figure out what caused his immortality. They couldn't figure it out, so they figured that he was too dangerous to keep around and abandoned him on this island to suffer for all eternity, basically. So his plan is to try and find out what has happened. As he crosses the fells, he is surprised to find that where there once was this fey forest, it's all gone. And now in the centre of these golden fields of wheat is a very tall black metal and glass, black stone, metal and glass, sort of several domes and spiralling towers of the dwarvish capital, Thal. Named for him, it means Erin's home in the dwarvish language. At the centre of it is a tower taller than most, older than most at an immediate glance, and it has in dwarvish carved on it, basically thank yous and welcomes to Erin. He initially enters the city under a disguise, finding that they have a statue dedicated to his honour in the grand entranceway, and eventually basically is found out and asked to be like the king's right hand man. So I had the basic idea that I wanted an immortal who had saved these dwarves, really impacted them, and was revered amongst them, returning. That was my jumping off point, what inspired the idea of it all being immortality based. Now, obviously making it into a D&D game, you have to be a lot more open, you have to be a lot more willing, but you have to have a good foundation. I was thinking more and more about this, and I was like, well, it was a female dwarf who helped Erin plan and helped them all escape. She would probably have gone on to become the leader of the dwarves. Most likely she would have become a royal, and it would be her family that passed it down. Now, I'd found a very beautiful piece of art for a female sort of dwarvish queen. And I thought, well, my setting 400 years ago, well, more than that, thousands of years ago, before the dwarves were pulled into slavery, they were mostly farmers. They were sort of a scattered people. They weren't one cohesive unit. That's why they were so easily overtaken. That made sense for the story I wanted to tell. If they were more cohesive, it would have been a harder battle for the elves. Made sense that by the time they went underground and started to bond together, it was too late at that point. They'd already been weakened and both mentally and physically in numbers. So it didn't make sense that they would have large power structures in place, except for maybe the odd larger farm owner and larger landowner. So I realised that the King of Arundel was probably their first contact with royalty. And it being a king and them not having the word for it in Dwarvish, they would have just adopted, most likely, the common word for head of state. In this case, it would be the king. So their head of state is always king, regardless of gender. It's a small thing, but it builds more into that richness of the world. The first thing you do when you're told that the king is a woman is want to know why, want to learn more about that and see how that came about. So it's a tiny little thing that doesn't really make much difference to the story, but it just deepens and breathes a little bit more life into the world. It's like Thal being surrounded by farmland. They burnt, basically, the dwarves, when they banded together and kicked out the elves, burnt Teaken Forest. They burnt that Fae Forest to the ground to drive the elves out and to weaken them and to kill them. They fled into the fells and then set themselves a big ring up, because it's in the centre of these mountains, and burnt the forest from all ends. There was nowhere for the elves to go. They all burnt to death in their castle.
That's brutal.
Almost nothing compared to what the elves were doing to them. And I will note, I didn't want to fall into the cliche of, elves are always evil. It was just, in this one circumstance, as the elves were the bad guys.
I never thought that. I thought the general premise with elves is that they're either stuck up or they're like Legolas and they've got like a 30-inch dong and they can run up a falling wall. And...
Well, that's the thing. I never want to fall too much into stereotypes in my game. The first dwarf that the party met back when they were in Null, which is the major port for Samarin, Didn't drink. He hated alcohol. There's a lot of stuff like that where I intentionally turn things on their head. The first main villain that the party fought was the Marchioness Barthroy. I didn't want it to be a big evil monster. I made it sound like it was a vampire or something, an evil monster that was killing all these people.
Yeah.
But it was just a normal human. She wasn't even magically talented.
Just had the, like, pointy stick.
She was just wealthy enough to hire other people and convince other people to do her bidding.
Wow.
Sometimes it's not the monsters. Sometimes it is just people.
Well, I mean...
Nothing is black and white.
I think there's a nice moral behind that. Like, because, like, it just goes to show that, like, if you're rich, you can get someone killed.
Eat the rich. No. But they're not all like that. And I went out of my way to make sure that the princess and prince and the king in Erenthal were all really good people. Yes, the king is stubborn as hell, and she can be a bit smarmy.
And the princess is banging one of the members of the party.
Yeah. She's very naive. The prince is very lackadaisical about his duties. They all are individual people. None of them are bad people. They're just... I can't say human, really, but... I try and make well-rounded characters. No one is two-dimensional.
That's cool.
Everyone's got a bit of story behind them. Even if I have to come up with that story off the top of my head. But I didn't really develop much of the world past Samrin at first. I knew that we were going to be in a Null, so I wrote a background for a Null. I knew we were going to be in Erenthal, so I wrote a background for Erenthal, and I knew we'd go between them. So Therinfall, which... People get annoyed at me because Erenthal, Thral, and Therinfall.
I think that's
F-A-L.
what I was originally referring to.
Yeah.
See, you've built this universe that, as a player in your universe, I do enjoy it, and it does feel like it has a lot of depth. Like, straight up. I look forward to the sessions. I look forward to seeing what's going to happen. I did get stressed at the last session. I didn't enjoy it, I'll be honest.
That was the point, though.
Yeah. The homemade...
Wheel of Suffering.
This was made out of parts of my radio control car.
You donated them. You can get them back.
I know. I just found the ingenuity of some cardboard, a rear axle off an RC car, and some tyre wraps. And we made this wonky ass wheel where we had these elf lichers. And I was like, dude, what the fuck? This is heresy. Because, of course, as a paladin, they're shit-eating scum. And I was getting really annoyed at it. I mean, to be fair, it wasn't all like, oh, I'm getting annoyed at the game. Like, it had been a long week.
It had been a very long week.
We were both, like, at the end of us tethers and the stressful game scenario. And I was just like, I just want me and the party to get through this and get the shiny ball that we needed so that we could do the thing.
And you did?
We did. But, like, it was very uncomfortable. It was very stressful. Although... knowing what I've been through in that particular story and the very vague bit of homework I did on it, because I know it was inspired from an Adventure Zone campaign, I enjoyed that and I appreciated all the work that got put into it, and I would totally recommend any DM to sort of put this in, but just butter your players up first with treats or something, or let them do something happy either before or after it. Because, it was fantastic. Don't get me wrong, the idea of the execution was absolutely spot on. But I think I was just being a grumpy bastard.
Well, bearing in mind, you guys had just entered Hell.
That was fun. I was totally stoked for that. I was like, fuck yeah, we're going to fight some demons. We're going to fuck some shit up. We're going to try and find that rogue knight who, tore a guy in half. I got to see what I had for breakfast.
You are in Hell. I told you it wasn't going to be a walk in the park.
I didn't want it to be a walk in the park.
And I felt like the Suffering Games side of things was important to show you that this ain't... You guys have chosen to come to somewhere terrible on purpose. I'm not going to pull my punches here.
I'd rather have, a massive demon that fires flames from its nipples and its knob's a giant sword.
I mean, that's coming, but that's not the point.
Oh my god.
But yeah, with world building, there's a few tips really. So you want to get the vague shape of where your story's taking place. Main key points, so where point A is, where point B is, and a couple of stops along the way. You need to get an idea as to what the land is like. Explaining to your if you're in travel, no one wants to go, cool, you travel for 2 weeks, blah, blah, blah. You want to make it more engaging.
Like the boat thing.
I came up with a random mini-arc, just off the top of my head, and just ran with it. But I mean more describing the areas to your players. My other group, the online group, are currently going through the Gnomish kingdom of Zaharid. And a lot of the layout of there is based on the Peak District in the UK, which is near to us. So there's a lot of old, worn, sort of cobblestone paths that are mostly grown over with dirt at this point. There's a lot of brushland, a lot of heather. There's a lot of mist that hangs over, especially in the early morning, before the sun sort of beats it away. And building that up, explaining with sights and smells and other senses really, really helps bring your characters in and focus their attention. And it doesn't have to be that difficult. Add some bad weather.
I mean,
it's not always sunny. People sit up and listen when you mention that it's drizzling with rain today. And it just pulls them in that little bit more. One of the big things with a null, because that was the first main city we were in, and the first arc took place there, I knew we would be there for a while. I wanted to have part of the story where the Marchioness of the area, who obviously is in charge, that she's the noble woman for the area, was orphaned at a relatively young age. Not childhood, but sort of coming into young adult. So I was like, okay, well, how did her parents die then? I didn't want it to be a flat-out murder scenario. I wanted something that could be maybe blamed on an individual with magical powers, but not flat-out, oh, my parents were murdered and it made me a bad guy. I wanted more depth to it, so I decided a sinkhole would work. So I had to do investigations into water tables, how sinkholes come across. And that led into, how does a null get its water? How does a null, feed through? So there's a nearby reservoir outside. There's the actual, underneath the city are several, oh god, it's been so long now, I've forgotten the words for it. Aquifers?
Aqueducts?
No, aquifers. Basically there's aqueducts transport water, and aquifers like a place where water is held. Anyway, there's a bunch of underground water storage and water tables that has led to a couple of sinkholes, including the one that killed her parents. Stuff like that you wouldn't normally think of. Where the town gets their food from, what their main diet is, how their water is granted. Those really, really build a world and help both you and the players see it as somewhere real. Null is a coastal town, but that's salt water, so where's the real fresh water coming from?
Fiji, of course.
But it's something you need to think about. Like, the small things really, really do help build it up. You don't have to be overly complicated with it, and a lot of it won't ever be brought up, but having it there as a backlog, having it there to help you feel like the world is real, will mean that you can pass that on easier to the players. Having that knowledge and history behind you is always going to be good for passing forward. But yeah, I mean, we're having a look. We're coming to the end of our time. I think we've run a little bit over, actually. I might have to cut a couple of bits.
That's totally fine. The last things we were going to really cover is that we're fucking hyped for the new Pokemon game. Yeah,
speaking of world building.
It's
going to be based on, in theory, around us.
Now, if this is actually going to be like, Britain sort of Pokemon world, I'm straight up, as an ode to our guy, internet comment etiquette, Eric, I would call my character Nobbleberry.
God.
And he will solve crimes with his violent hooligan Pokemon. And it's going to be excellent.
But yeah, world building is something that's very controversial when it comes to the Pokemon game. Some people love it, some people hate it.
It's like Marmite, apart from replace Marmite with like sodium hydroxide and baking soda, and it leaves a very nasty raw taste in your mouth if you don't like it.
I mean, it would probably kill you, but yeah.
Well, you never know.
But I'm excited anyway. I'm excited.
Me too.
It looks good. A lot of people are looking at it as Game of Thrones, Which I suppose, yeah, it's all based on England, so...
Yeah, because the rest of the world now thinks we all fucking live in castles and Sean Bean dies every 20 minutes.
Yeah. No. But yeah, that I'm really excited for, so let us know in the comments what starter you're going to pick.
Yeah, please.
I think I'm going to go Scorch Bunny, but I don't know, I'm going to have to see what the...
mostly
because I always pick fire.
That likes the water guy.
No, the Sorball's really cute, but I just always end up going for the fire starter. I don't know why.
Fine. Well, yeah, that's what we're excited for. And off the back of that, since it is a Switch game, advice for this week. If you're going to buy a portable console, back in the day we used to say always keep a spare set of AA's on you. But nowadays, get a fucking case.
Yeah, we next week we're going to be covering portable gaming. So through ages, history of portable gaming to now. Yeah, always fork out, pay that little bit of money to get a proper travel case for it.
Yeah, as someone who's got every console from the original Game Boy upwards in portable form, including the N-Gage, not afraid to say that, fight me. Having a good case that protects your machine is paramount.
Yeah, because even the older machines had protective carry cases.
Even though you could literally bludgeon someone to death with a Game
but
Boy.
it's not the point, because that one time is all it's going to take. That one drop is all it's going to be.
This is why they live in a glass case now.
But yeah, always get the travel case. It's always worth it. If you're getting a portable console, you're going to be bashing it around a lot. It's going to get knocked in your backpack and the screen's going to crack.
Yeah, and some small relative that's a fraction of your age is going to go, "Can I ever go on it?" And then
drop
puts
it
in the tumble dryer or drops it.
So, yeah, travel case is a must. And with that, we'll be back next week to have a bit more of a chat.
Hell yeah. Have a good week and we'll see you next time.
We don't know what day it is anymore. But yeah, have a fantastic week, guys, and we'll speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.